Hi, I'm Shelby Williams with Plano City Council. Tonight's meeting on May 11th was fairly quick, but we had a lot of preliminary open meeting items to cover. We had an interesting discussion in executive session, but I can't tell you about it because it was in executive session. In the preliminary open meeting, we appointed Ron Kelley to the North Texas Municipal Water District Board. We had a monthly comprehensive financial report. We have expended about half of our plan. We're about halfway through the fiscal year now. Fiscal year starts October 1st. So we've predictably expended about half of it, but the amount of money we're going to take in for the rest of the year is likewise predictably going to be less. We collected our property taxes at the beginning of the year, so most of the general fund is funded. I think the number was about 85-ish% funded so far in the general fund, but a lot of the other funds are only about half funded as they get steady receipts throughout the year. Because of the economic impact of the pandemic and the shutdowns, we anticipate less revenue, and so we're going to have to tighten our belts. In fact, we already have been. The city of Plano has not furloughed anybody, but we have put a freeze on hiring, and we are doing everything we can to make sure that we are spending your money responsibly and prioritizing to the greatest needs and holding back the funds for necessary items that we might have otherwise spent on nice-to-haves, which we are not anymore. We then looked at the Public Funds Investment Act report. An interesting call out in that report was that our investments earned $80 per capita in interest earnings. So for every person in Plano, we were able to get an $80 return, which we can then put back into your city and your quality of life. We had the Departmental report, and we discussed what to do with the boards and commissions meetings. With the pandemic, most boards and commissions have been on hiatus. We agreed that the time is right to start having them meet again. We are going to waive the Texas Open Meetings Act, which truly isn't required. We just adhere to it anyway, for advisory committees. It applies to decision-making committees like Planning and Zoning and the City Council, but it is option or is voluntary for advisory committees. We do it anyway, but we're going to allow the boards and commissions to determine whether they want to resume meeting online, or if we can provide safe standards for meeting in person, then we can enable that. Any online meetings via Zoom, we're going to waive the Open Meetings Act for those advisory committees only due to the expense in broadcasting those publicly. It's easy to have just a group Zoom meeting, that's not expensive, but everything involved with broadcasting that publicly and having viewership, that costs. So any in-person meetings will still be subject to the Open Meetings Act, even though it's not required. We then moved to our regular meeting. There were two broader categories of items on the agenda. The second one, which was in a supplemental agenda, actually got tabled. That is for a couple of agreements with Collin County regarding pandemic response and planning. So the language for that wasn't quite worked out. It's still being hammered. So we have tabled that hammered out, I should say. So we've tabled that until the May 26th meeting. The other item was for revision of how we use HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development, block grant funding. Now, we had 3 items with 3 votes, all of which passed unanimously. They all pertained to getting us to the final point. So the first one was to change the rules as provided for under the CARES Act that Congress recently passed to respond to the needs precipitated by the pandemic, especially the economic needs. So we changed the requirements for public hearings, shortened and modified the requirements, and allowed, of course, the online video conferencing version of the public meetings and public comment. That was the first vote. The second vote was where the substantial discussion was had. This was a substantial amendment because it basically reshuffled what we're using funds for. For the community block grant program, for the HUD funding, we have to say what we're going to use the money for. And under normal circumstances, we've got several categories where that money is allocated. We have reshuffled the money so that we can best respond to homelessness prevention, rental assistance, and small business relief support. So we went through all of that. The video, you can see the archive on Plano TV to see what the dollar allocations were in the new categories. But that is what we are going to use the money for overwhelmingly to respond to the pandemic, because so many people have needs because of the forced shutdowns. Businesses have been shuttered, businesses have lost income, families have lost breadwinners, people have lost jobs, income for a short time or permanent, well, not permanently hopefully, but lost their job and will then have to go seek new employment. So we're going to try to help out in light of the forced government shutdowns as best we can. And then the third and final vote was to actually apply, having approved the previous two. And that ended the meeting. We have, as you've probably noticed, whittled down our council meetings to the essentials during all of this. Our budget process is in the works right now. We will vote on the next fiscal year's budget in September for the new fiscal year. Like I said, it starts October 1. And so that's creeping up on us. It is a rapidly changing situation, and we do not yet know the real economic impacts even of the past month, because there's a 30 to 60 day trailing time to get all of the receipts, get all of the indicators that tell us the real story. So 30, 60 days from now, we are going to have a clearer picture of what happened now, but we still don't know what the longer term ramifications of this are going to be. So we have to be responsible in what we do. We need to make sure that people's rights are upheld and the needs that were torpedoed by the forced shutdowns are met and responded to. We need to remain the city of excellence and do our best to create an environment in which all of our people can prosper and to come out of this. We're going to do our best, and we will have to be able to roll with the punches. So stay tuned for more. We'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Good night.